Nutshell just means submission to God. So, like, you know how Christianity means follower of Christ, Judaism means follower of Judah, Buddhism means follower of Buddha, Islam just means submission to God. So we're not necessarily just followers of Muhammad. From our perspective, we believe in one creator, one unique independent, and he's like nothing else, so nothing like his creation, right? And he has chosen people throughout time to be prophets and messengers just to guide humanity back to moral principles, right? So Adam, Noah, Abraham, Jesus, Moses, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them all, right? They're all prophets that God, normal human beings from the Islam perspective, but God chose them to basically guide mankind onto the straight path, right? Whether that to do with inheritance, whether that to do with divorce, marriage, connecting with the Creator, right? Whatever particular issues that we deal with, revelation would have been revealed to take care of them problems, right? And we believe that the Quran is the last and final revelation, alongside a revelation being given to Jesus, to Moses, to Abraham. The Quran is the last and final one, right? And that's why the Muslims preserve it, and that's why we memorize it as well, right? And that's why it has been kept the same from the time of Prophet Muhammad till now. And our morality comes from this book, right? Because we believe, let's say, we claim this is the word of God, right? And therefore we say that the word of God is perfect, therefore we believe it, right? Whether it is the word of God or not, that's another claim to make, and I have to substantiate evidence for that, right? And certain criteria can be put in place to make sure if that's true or not, right? Are there contradictions in there? Is it coherent with the outside world, right? Does it make sense, or does it sound like just like fairy tales, right? Is it linguistically perfect? Is it scientifically, does it make sense, etc., etc., right? And there are a couple of verses within the Quran that are very eye-opening, because the Quran just claims to be a book of signs, right? Ayat, we say in Arabic, right? Proofs and reminders for the human being to contemplate about their own existence.
I do have a copy of the Quran at home, the English version.
Okay.
Given right.
Right. Right.
I haven't looked at it yet. So.
Okay. Okay. Right. Again, it's like it's not like a storybook as well. Like the Bible is like a set of like stories, right? It talks about the life of Noah, the life of Moses, the life of Adam, the life of Jesus, right? And like most of them are written in third person as well, right? They're just historical accounts about that particular historical figure after him. Does that make sense, right? So Muslims won't claim that to be as word of God. Why? Because these are historical accounts written after those particular people, right? Because in Deuteronomy 34 it talks about Moses' death. Earlier on it talks about Exodus, how they escaped Egypt, etc., etc. So it talks about their life in detail, right? We have that as well in the Islamic tradition. It's called Sirah. Sirah just means a biography about the Prophet Muhammad, right? So we won't class that as revelation. It'll just be a historical account, right? But the Quran, but we believe Jesus would have been given something similar. Moses would have been given something similar as the Quran. Does that make sense? In their language, in their lifetime, right? In Islam, we also believe in the concept of a soul, right? That everybody has a soul, right? And that once you pass away, you will, after the whole world does come to an end, after the universe does come to an end, everybody will be held accountable for their actions, right? So good or bad, everything will be held accountable for, right? So for example, I'm not sure if you're aware about what's happening in Palestine right now. All the historical problems in the past, innocent people who have been wronged. For example, you can't give justice to 20,000 dead kids, right? That just happened in the last 7 months. They're gone now, right? And they experienced the trauma that they did. And now you can't, even if, let's say, you get rid of Israel, you can't bring back the pain that, the people have gone through. You can't, right? So we believe in a concept of a day of judgment where everybody will have their retribution, if that makes sense, right? Where somebody was done wrong, even when, let's say, small matters as well within families, whatever, you will be held accountable for it, right? Unless, you fix that problem. So, for example, let's say somebody steals a watch, right? Islamically speaking, he has to ask God's forgiveness and the person's forgiveness as well. Why? Because he wronged mankind, he wronged society. If I now, let's say, drink alcohol, right, I just have to ask God's forgiveness because that's a commandment that God has told me not to do, and I disobeyed Him only. Therefore, I ask His forgiveness, right? So when it comes to like laws of society and laws of, let's say, between you and the Creator, they both have different let's say consequences on the Day of Judgment as well. Right? Um, we believe in the concept of free will. Everybody has the right or the ability to act upon their own free choice, right? So whether that be a good or a bad one, right? Everybody has that right. Nobody is controlling anybody to force them to do in a particular matter. Depends on the circumstance. If you're forced to do something, right? Islamically, you can't hold that person accountable, right? But if you have the choice to deny, let's say, a bad action, you are now actively denying that bad action. Does that make sense? Right? So people who kill, murder, steal, rape, right? They are doing that from their own free will. God has given mankind that ability to make that choice. That's the whole purpose of this life being a test, right? So this life, from the Islam perspective, is a test, and then you'll be held accountable on the Day of Judgment. Does that make sense? Right. What's your perspective of there being, let's say, a God? You don't know, right? Islam is a very, let's say, logical way of life, right? We have rules and systems put in place for inheritance, for divorce, for marriage, for respecting your parents, right? Respecting your neighbors. What's your own rights? What's the rights of people who don't know you? What's the rights of, let's say, your family, right? Politics.
Our race is the same as yours. We don't get the kind of respect that you give your parents.
You know what it is?
Not all people. I do.
Right.
Not everybody.
And you're lucky, right? And I think that's not, let's say, a cultural thing, right? There will be, let's say, for example, a predominantly Islamic country, because Islam is practiced more often, right? Whether it's practiced perfectly or not, that's a separate matter, right? Because you'll have corruption everywhere, right? Therefore, there's a higher chance of people obeying that particular rule. That one of the biggest sins in Islam is to disrespect the parents, right? Especially the mother, right? So you'll see that less often because the people will see it as a big dishonor within the community. How come he's disrespecting his mother? For example, me shouting back at my mother is something that doesn't exist. It's just it doesn't exist within my world, right, or my worldview, right? But it can be developed depending on what society you are brought up in. So within the British society, for example, due to social media as well, I think social media has a huge role to play in it, right? And the conditioning of the government as well, right? It's very common. You see in comedies, you see in dramas of children swearing back at their parents or saying that, oh, you're fat or you're ugly or I don't want to be near you, go away, right? Or saying that, oh, go away, I don't want to, I'm okay, mom, right? Like this kind of mentality or this kind of behavior is not something that's practiced within the Islamic paradigm, right? So the idea of Islam is the reason why, let's say, Pakistan or Afghanistan or Arabia has that dedication to the mother, right? But cultures are always flawed, right? Whereas Islam, from my perspective, isn't. My culture, the Pakistani culture, will be flawed. They'll have things in it that is against the religion of Islam, right? But there'll be things that they adhere to, right? So it is possible for, let's say people who grow up in different societies to disrespect their parents, but Islamically speaking, that's wrong. I can't do that, right? So and the idea of that, Islam, it's not wherever Islam is practiced. It can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be necessarily in a particular region, right? Because it's a belief system. That's where you have Chinese Muslims, you have Japanese Muslims, you have Muslims. Africa has always had a lot of Muslims in it, but Muslims from America, etc., South America, where Islam didn't initially reach, right? That's where you have people who do accept Islam from there as well, right? But the idea of, let's say, because Islam is based upon this idea of monotheism. If monotheism clicks with you, then Islam will click as well, right? Otherwise, you'll have so many questions. All right, why should I fast? Why should I pray? Why should I, respect my parents, right? The simple answer is from the Islam perspective, because God said so, right? So if the idea of God doesn't make sense to you, then Islam won't, right? But the Quran promotes the human being, right, Muslim or non-Muslim, to think and ponder about life, right? Whether that be your daily activities, right? What you might notice within yourself, your family, right? Etc. Trends within society, right? The Quran promotes you to be an active thinker, right? I'm not supposed to rush into decisions, whether that be religious or not, without thinking about it, right? Whether that be with Islam or not. So the Quran says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ, why won't they ponder? Meaning to say, and there's a verse in the Quran that says that within the alternation of night and day, there are signs for people with intelligence. Meaning, if you observe the universe, if you observe your daily life, it's not an irrational thing to claim that there has to be a higher power, right? For example, right, if there's order, stability, and regularity within the universe, right, something has to implement that there. Right? You can't get something from nothing. That's the Islamic claim, right? And I can give you a complex argument, but I like to keep it simple. If I have to say this table has just popped out of nowhere, nobody put this in place, would you accept my claim for it? No, right? Because your logic dictates that somebody manufactures it, somebody put it there, somebody's arranged these books here as well, right? So there's a verse in the Quran that says that were they the creators of themselves, or did they come from nothing, right? Meaning to say that did you make yourself, right, or did you come from nothing, right? And logically speaking, it's impossible to get something from nothing. Metaphysically, scientifically, logically, it's impossible, right? Because I like to give a funny example. If I give you a glass, I sprinkle nothing into this glass, pour nothing into this glass, would you have a glass of? Nothing, right? So, but Islam has also been a very forward way of life as well, right? And what I mean by that is, 1,400 years ago, there was a verse revealed in the Quran, and that's in the Quran now. It says that the heavens and the earth were a joint entity, then we separated them and created from water every living thing, right? So we don't necessarily reject this idea of the universe being one focal point and then expanding. There's another verse in the Quran that says that we are the expander of the universe, right? Long before Einstein came with his theory of expansion, right? Or law of expansion, right? We understand that, we don't necessarily reject the idea of, let's say, a Big Bang, right? But something had to put that in place. Something had to initiate that. And we believe something powerful has to do that, because the universe is a powerful existence, right? So we believe in an all-powerful God, all-knowing God, all-seeing one, right? But he's independent in his essence, right? He's not, you can't fathom what he looks like, right? And he's not a man or a woman, he's not a tree or an animal, he's just an existence with these attributes about him, right? About the creator, right? And he's not man or woman as well. And that's our understanding within Islam. Do you have any questions? You know what? I'm just going to give you a bit of material, and you can read it in your spare time. This one talks about, this is like non-religious argumentation of the existence of God, right? And this is about the Quran, right? Claiming why it is the word of God. You know about that claim that I made earlier on? That's that book addressing that. And this is about why you should love God as well, right? If you do acknowledge his existence, right? And for a bit of fun, pick a card. Turn over. What does it say? Again, another moral concept, right? To not cause corruption and eat what God has given you. Not to be stingy or miserly as well, right? So we're not anti-material, right? You know how some faiths are totally not materialistic, right? We understand you can't cause corruption, right? Whether that to be with whatever problem, we're against corruption. That's why there's justice systems within the Quran as well, right? But whether that be food or drink, whatever God has given you, spend it. Don't keep it and hoard it, thinking that you're gonna live forever. So that's what it is.
Thank you.
We're here every Saturday. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you.
Take care.